Welcome to the Reality Revolution. I'm your host, Brian Scott, and this is dedicated to all those spirits out there who believe life is meant to be magical and fun. Here we venture to share the very mysteries of self and reality. My purpose is to help light that spark inside of you, to reawaken your sense of fascination and awe towards the world. I'm going to try to help you hack reality and unleash your potential and open unlimited possibilities of wealth, health, and relationships in your life. Welcome to the Reality Revolution. I'm so excited today. I have Deni Van from Heartfelt Awakening Radio podcast, and so excited. I just did an interview with Deni yesterday, and this is for the Reality Revolution. Just to let you know, Deni Van is a teacher, author, speaker, researcher, and her passion and specialty is facilitating the spiritual awakening process. Her unique process of heartfelt awakening with aligning body, breath, and spirit while researching and quantifying the awakening journey has helped hundreds of her clients who are struggling emotionally, mentally, and or physically, and who are seeking guidance and balance between mind, body, breath, and spirit. She draws upon her own experience of surviving years of trauma and then cancer at age 35, turning down traditional medicine and listening to the tiny voice inside that started her on her healing and spiritual awakening journey. And I'm so excited to hear your story. Welcome to the Reality Revolution, Deni.
Thank you for having me, Brian. I'm so excited to be here, especially after our talk yesterday. I'm really looking forward to it.
Yeah, so just wanted, first of all, for people watching the Reality Revolution, I highly recommend your YouTube channel. You have a terrific channel, and what you've done is you've broken down Reality Transurfing in a very unique way, mapping it out. And in a way, you kind of see some interconnections, and you see different themes, and it's you come at it differently. It's a great way to learn it and kind of implant some of these ideas, because it's that kind of book. It's teaching you a process, a method. What made you come up with the idea of evaluating reality transurfing in this way?
Well, Reality Transurfing, the book itself, kind of fell into my lap. Mm-hmm. And when I ordered it, I didn't know it was going to be 765 pages and 19 chapters. Uh-huh. And I started in on it, and I'm like, oh my God, this is what I've been feeling. Oh my gosh, this is what I've had this inner knowing of. Oh my gosh, this makes so much sense. And like you said yesterday, I've read through the book more than 5 times now, and every single time I get out of it something completely different, as if I'm reading the book the first time. So I'm a visual learner, and I also, I'm a sign language interpreter. So I love to explain things in a visual way. Mm-hmm. And the mind map just came to me, where I can just pick out things and begin to create a model. And really, I did the mind map for myself. I did it for me. And I wanted to create a model, because that's what Vadim is really presenting us, is a model with a lot of pieces to it. Not all of those pieces fit within me, but the ones that did really, really resonated with me. And it took my spiritual journey on a whole nother plane that I never dreamed possible. And so I just began, starting to put together some of the ideas and the points and the exercises and things that really resonated with me and made sense. And next thing you know, I'm making a video and I'm posting them. And before I knew it, all 19 chapters were done. Mm-hmm. And so it was really an expression of love to show this in a different way, because the way Vadim shows it, first of all, it's not in the original language. It's presented to us in Russian, which has been translated. Right. And some of the, because I love translated work. I love interpreting. I love languages. And this is how it fell into my lap, because it was a newly translated into English work. And some of the translation is confusing. Mm-hmm. It could be better.
That was my impression. There's 2 different translations out there. The space of variations, for instance, is not even used in my Kindle copy, that actual phrase. But there's another version where he says, instead of alternative space, and it's like did they have a meeting where they got together and they said, okay, we're going to change it from the space of variations to the alternative space? Or was it a translation error Because there is an abundance of different meaning behind those two terms. Am I right? Right.
I would definitely agree with that, because the alternative space means it's an alternative to what we're in.
Right.
But the space of variations is the space between you and me, where I don't know what city you're in. What city are you in?
Orange.
California. Yeah, so you're in California. I'm in Chicago. But the space of variations doesn't know time and space. Hey, you got to be quiet, little boy, okay?
I got a cat meowing. You got a dog. It's perfect. It's all good.
I think maybe he's hearing the cat meowing. It
Probably.
So, yeah, exactly on. So sometimes it could create a little bit of confusion or uncertainty when you're reading it as to whether, did I understand this right? And so I would make little notes, just like you, and make little notes, and then this mind map. And I think after I released the mind map and somebody shared it, that's how we met.
That's right.
How you and I, yes.
You were on one of the boards on Real, and then you had shared it, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. And it's easy to go through every single one of the videos right away, and I totally picked up a lot of different stuff from it, and it was very helpful, and I highly recommend it. I will put a link for that episode or for that group of episodes in this page. But I wanted to talk a little bit more in your, as I explained in my bio, you've obviously been through a huge change and spiritual awakening, and I just wanted to get your story. Your spiritual awakening occurred before Reality Transurfing, right? This is So let's get an idea of what happened before you encountered Reality Transurfing.
Back in 2001, I was at the top of my career. I looked very, very successful on the outside. I was making good money. I was doing really great things, and I got a diagnosis of cancer on my 35th birthday.
Oh, wow.
And, you go through the process, going to the doctors and doing this and being told to do this, this, and this. And I felt this numbness. I wasn't alive. It's like, okay, what is this? And I realized I hadn't really taken care of myself. I looked like it on the outside. I had this facade that, yes, I'm looking very successful on the outside, but on the inside, I was literally dying, and I wasn't dealing with or integrating my past. And so, I'd go to the doctor, and the doctor would say, all right, we're going to inject you with radioactive dye to remove lymph nodes, and that will determine if you're going to get radiation with your chemo. It's like, oh God. And, asking questions, and the doctor says, we're going to do this surgery when I get back from vacation. And so I start thinking, I had a 7-year-old and a 15-year-old, and we were planning to go to Disney World in Orlando, Florida. And I'm doing the math. Okay, 2 weeks when you get back, then I had the surgery, and then 2 weeks later, we're going on vacation. So I asked the doctor, will I be able to go on vacation with my kids after that? And he's like, oh no, cancel your vacation plans. And I was like, you tell my 7-year-old he's not going to Disney World. And I realized, oh my gosh, I told the doctor, I really need to think this through. And I prayed and I prayed and I prayed. And it's like, what do I do? This doesn't feel right. This going down this path doesn't feel right. And there was a little voice inside that said, this isn't for you. So I said no. And I was told I'd be dead in 2 years because, stage 4 malignant melanoma, spreading, a very fast spreading form of cancer.
Scary.
And what I did, I went to work. What I did was I found a surgeon who agreed to just remove the tumor. I found an oncologist. She's wonderful. I told her, I'm like, look, this is what I want to do. And she's like, all right, you have to do something. If you're not going to do chemo and radiation, what are you going to do? And I'm like, wow, I really haven't thought about that. So I opened myself up. All right, what am I going to do? And Dr. Mercola came into my world in 2001. He was like unknown at the time, very much into EFT. And I went through his professional EFT training where here's me in a room full of doctors. So this was a time where I was listening, because what was in my outside world showing me that I had to do wasn't resonating. Looking back on it, obviously I was scared to death. It's like, oh my God, I could be dead in 2 years. I have a 7 and a 14-year-old. What the heck is this? And I had to come to a space where I had to be okay with dying.
Yeah.
As a reality, right? Okay, with the reality of dying, I had to be okay with. Once I was okay with dying, I started living. Oh my God. These experiences, one after another, started coming into my experience. And be quiet, little boy. And then
you just heard the meowing, so that's
I think that's it.
Here,
I think that's
1 second for everybody that's watching.
Rike, come here. Good boy. You be quiet. Good, be quiet. Good, be quiet. Good boy. Oh my God, he's so cute.
We'll just keep this in, and I'll pet my cat while.
Okay, and I'll keep him quiet.
So,
this is the interview of the pets.
Right. So, what did you end up doing? What was your best solution? And how, for people listening that may be in a similar situation, what did you do to deal with this?
The first thing I did was learn meditation. And I talked to my husband, and we both started yoga and meditation. And this allowed me to get quiet, the rustling of the morning stars.
Right.
And to get out of my mind, because the mind was scared to death, and the mind would go off on these scenarios. It's like, oh my God, you're going to die. You're going to be, I was 35 at the time, I'm 53 now, but looking back at 35, I was barely living. Right. I hadn't even lived yet. And so the mind was going, and with yoga and meditation, I created just enough space between me and the mind. And I realized the mind and heart were not in unity. And I began, yoga is yoking in unity. I began to unify my mind and my heart. And, my mind would say, we're going to be dead in 2 years. And the heart will just say, it's okay, darling. It's okay.
It's okay, whatever happens.
It's okay, whatever happens. And it's the most blissfully terrifying moment of my life. Yeah. Yes, because when you're in it, and I talk with people, sometimes I have clients come, Deni, I just got a diagnosis. I'm scared to death. And the first thing I'll do is, let's sit with that scared to death and let's see what story it has to tell us. And they'd be like, what? I don't want this scared to death.
Right.
And that's the first thing we want to do is push this away. And so this began my journey of doing the work inside. And next thing I know, outside, a doctor is showing up. A book is showing up. Somebody who was very influential in my healing journey showed up. I learned transcendental meditation. I became a course junkie. I'm sure you can relate.
Oh, absolutely.
Where I learned EFT, neuro-linguistic program, became a yoga instructor, massage therapist, licensed massage therapist. I love the human body and how it works, and psychology and mental health as opposed to mental illness. Because when you get a diagnosis like cancer, your mind goes right down. You go right down. And
to the worst place.
Exactly. And you start thinking the worst things, and you start believing those things. Because, the doctor told me I'd be dead in 2 years if I didn't do these things.
Right. And it's amazing that you found that switch and you said, I'm not going to believe that. Because there's a part of you that had to sincerely not believe, because your beliefs are going to end up happening no matter what. So there's a part of you deep down that said, I don't believe my doctor, who is a doctor, who is telling me this. And it's amazing that you were able to follow your hunch and your intuition, because there's a lot of people out there that didn't listen to that little voice that was telling them to do that. So.
And it's interesting because I really didn't say I don't believe that. It was more of a sense of that's not for you. Even in the book, Vadim talks about what is supposed to be mine.
Right.
And so that wasn't supposed to be mine. But fear would have made me continue on the path that wasn't supposed to be mine.
What is the best technique that you can share to reduce fear in
EFT.
Situations like the EFT? Now, you had many of your earlier videos, which I've checked out, and I'm a big fan of EFT as well. It has helped me when I've had anxieties related to, especially with when you talk to people with post-traumatic stress symptoms. Tell me a little bit more. Tell us all a little bit more about EFT and how it's what you do and how it's changed your life.
I learned EFT from Dr. Mercola back in the early 2000s. And the way I do it is, even Vadim talks about this. There's this movement and then there's this stillness. And so when I'm using EFT, I recognize, acknowledge, and just look at. So I'll tap on, even though I'm scared to death, even though my body is shaking, even though I don't know what to do. When you're looking at how you're feeling and acknowledging it, this begins this integration process. What we have a tendency to do is say, I'm not looking at this. I'm not those things. I don't want those things.
Right.
But instead, with EFT, you're looking at it. You're talking to this thing as if it's an entity separate from you, because it really is not you. So I began to tap, even though I have this cancer, even though I'm scared to death, even though I'm going to die. I'm told I'm going to die. And my doctor also said that most cancer patients will get cancer within the next 5 years. So he dropped 2 seeds within my consciousness.
Right.
And I had to fight those from taking root. Mm-hmm. So even though I could be dead in 5 years, even though I could be dead in 2 years, even though I'm scared to death, I choose. Now, here is the important part that I do with EFT, is the choice. The choice is the shift. So even though I'm in the movement and in the thoughts of it all, even though all of these, and I accept all of these, this is what's happening, this is what is, I choose to be in the center, expansiveness, openness, center of my being, and then just sit there for a moment. What this does is it creates some space, inner space. It creates this inner space. So the mind is constantly throwing ideas and thoughts and stuff at you, but you're so close to it. You believe it. But with EFT, it creates more of this inner space. And I began to see the mind and its works as not me.
Ah, okay.
So creating this inner space, and EFT is a wonderful, wonderful tool. Emotional freedom technique. So emotion, energy in motion. Freedom, you're free from the motion. Because we get all caught up in the movement. Oh my God, all these things are happening. Right. This is me. I'm going to die. All of this movement in the mind. But the heart is just here. The heart is here. So if I can acknowledge all this movement, oh my gosh, I'm scared to death, but I choose to stay quiet and be in the expansiveness of this larger part of me that I can't use my 5 senses to detect, but it's there because it's animating this meat suit. What does Vadim call it? I call it the meat suit. This is my meat suit. Vadim calls it a mannequin.
A mannequin, right.
Right? So my mannequin here is a temporary vessel.
Right.
But there's a larger part of me that is timeless.
So do you believe the idea that we all choose how we die? Or that in most cases we choose, I've talked to people that believe this, and in some ways I start to see it. You know, when somebody gets dementia, there's a part of them that's choosing to go down that path. And so after, I like to ask somebody that's been through something like, do you think that we choose? It's a big revelation to come to, but do we think we choose our sicknesses, our diseases, and our deaths?
I look at the plant and animal kingdom. So in the plant kingdom, when it's natural, there's no disease, there's no stress on the plants to cause sickness, if you will.
Right.
But as soon as you add the stress, plants begin to respond with sickness, with even hermetization, where a female plant could become a male. This process only happens when there's unnaturalness forced upon it. So it's a response. So I don't know so much as if it's a choice,
right,
but rather a natural response. So if you're eating junk all the time, the natural response is cancer.
right.
The choice is to eat the junk. The natural response is a consequence of it. So yes, we choose to eat it, but we might ignorantly be choosing cancer as
Do you think
the
we
response.
have the power to overcome what we've eaten and our environment in these situations? Sometimes people out there don't have a choice about what they're eating because of the situation and environment they're in, or their environment. So do you think that the power of our mind can help us to overcome those kind of variables?
Yes, using the mirror and plates. Because what we see in our physical world right now are plates from the past.
Right.
So once we got to start inside first. We got to start energetically first, which you can't see the consequences or the results of it until time and action begin to manifest. So if we can start now in the energetic realm first, but we want to change the image of the mirror. You know, we're looking at the image and we don't like what we see, so we try and change the image. This is the insanity.
Right.
So yes, we can, but it has to come off as a fantasy first. And then once that is from the back, you know, we talk about the plate. A lot of people want to know more information about that plate. So think of that plate, projecting it forward. It's here now. It's not here yet. So when we get it here and it's real here, it becomes real here. But we want to see it here first without doing the actual work.
Right. Well, then that leads me to this next question. The plat is a very fascinating subject. And I've asked anybody I've interviewed about reality transurfing their opinions about it. Had you heard of any energy? You're somebody, you love to read about all these different courses like me. Had you heard of any reference to something similar to the plat? The best I've found is the Bindu chakra in yoga, and Carlos Castaneda mentions the umbrage point in his books. I don't know if you consider him a credible author. But there is very little discussion in a lot of metaphysical literature about the plat. But when you study the idea behind quantum physics that we're collapsing particles, the observer effect, there is a natural flow of energy on some level from the back to the front. That's what's in this. There is a process. You can see an energy conversion because it's a process of the energy coming back, and in the front of us, we're actually witnessing this route. So you can understand, even on a physics level, of how it works. So when did you get an idea? Did you understand this reference before reality transurfing? Okay, then tell me a little bit about what your experience was before you had heard about the plat.
I had studied, I'm a reverend, and I study all religions, and I've, from Genesis to Revelation to all kinds of religious sacred texts out there. And one of the things that I learned about this area in the back was from Kabbalah.
Okay.
And in Kabbalah, in the Tree of Life, you have the first hole that splits.
Right.
And then the triangle flips.
Right.
So between where the triangle flips, there's a spot there called Da'ath, and it's in the back.
Okay.
It's in the back. So when you look at the Kabbalah diagram, it will show the Da'ath, but it's not really emphasized. But this is the plat. This is the part where this is where our energy, this is kind of where we're plugged into the universe. Right. This is where I am the puppet on the strings, the invisible strings, through this area. And I call it where my angel wings come out, because I was doing I was doing an interview with the Spoon Bender Cafe, the lady who teaches spoon bending, and I'm like, I'm going to bend this spoon. Of course, it's ego that's going to bend the spoon.
Right.
So I got the strongest spoon I could, and I could find in the house that I could not bend. And this was like a Monday, and I tried bending it, and it ain't doing it. By Friday, I'm just sitting with it, and I'm feeling it like I would craniosacral therapy, where you feel the craniosacral system, and I could feel the energy in the spoon. And then all of a sudden, I felt this opening in my back. It felt like I had these invisible, huge angel wings that were just opening.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and it was coming from the back. All of a sudden, you know, I'm holding the spoon, and all of a sudden, I'm like, I'm going to bend the spoon. And boom, there it was.
Oh, wow.
I didn't use any of them. I mean, from Monday to Thursday, I'm bending. This sucker ain't bending. And then all of a sudden on Friday, I felt this opening and expansion. And I knew I'm going to bend the spoon. Boom, there it went.
Right.
So that was really a wonderful experience. And then when I read Vadim's book about the plat, I'm like, this is what Kabbalah teaches.
Yes.
This area in the back that plugs into us. And then we're able to do things that this human body, this mannequin, this meat suit couldn't do by itself.
Right. So then I'm excited. It's interesting. Neuroscience right now, neurologists have tried to scientifically create meditations that they can see effects on in the brain. And so I tried to kind of use, it's the open sense presence. And it's the idea to your left, behind you, there's a presence. And when you talk to people about their higher self, and then you talk about, you know, if you just sit in meditation for 5 minutes and try to imagine somebody that's right behind you to your left, that when you look back, you can't see. And I did this. I was like, oh my gosh, this is this powerful thing. And so it just seems like recently I've started to think about this energy stream. And then you're right. Even though they say it's attached to the head, you feel it in your back. You feel it in an area between your shoulders, even a little bit lower in your back. So there's a lot of...
It's kind of like where T1 and C7 come. You know, you have that bump right there.
Exactly. Now, there's a lot of confusion. I have a plat activation meditation on one of my... a lot of confusion. People want to do it right. You know, they want to follow those specific rules. So I really think it's like drinking water. You know, there's no right way to drink water. There's probably a million different ways to do it. Can't be something where, you didn't activate it for 30 seconds or anything like that. But he does give a lot of different exercises to activate the plat. And of course, there's that part of me that, hey, I really want to do this right. And that's one of the reasons I created the meditation. Even though the plat is working, how can we get in there and change it? And he's obviously talking about it, but it can't be as easy, or we would all be wizards right now after reading that book. So there is a game to it, or there is a system to it. And so I want to share as many success stories. Do you hold an image and drop it into the plat? Do you hold it in the area of the plat? How do you go about activating and using this energy channel?
I like to use the analogy of a movie theater and the plat.
Okay, right.
So you have your awareness, and you can move your awareness around.
Right.
Your awareness can include your five senses, but really it's beyond the five senses. So if you can imagine, you have a screen, a big white screen. Then you have the audience. And then, you know, in the olden days when you used to go see movies, they had the little room way up in the back where the picture with the light coming out and then putting it on the screen. Your awareness can be in the screen, in the audience, and with the guy up where the light is being splashed out onto the screen. The plat is up there because the guy that sees, you know, the film coming through, he can see the film coming before it's actually splashed on the screen.
Right.
So we can change that picture before it's splashed on the screen. So when we are aware, most of us are very much aware of being on the screen in the world. We are a character and we are the character.
Right.
When our awareness is observing from the audience, there's a little bit more space there. We're more observant, and we might think, I don't want to be that character anymore. I want to change my character.
Right.
And so we begin to understand that we can change this play. We can change it up. Then we realize, oh, wait a second. What's back there? I'm going to go up there. Now you have to leave the screen. You have to leave the audience. And you got to go and see what pictures are coming up before it hits the screen.
What is the secret to doing that, to getting into the film room and looking at the camera before it projects the film?
The rustling of the morning stars.
The rustle of the morning stars. It's not held in just meditating on that location. A lot of people will interpret Vadim's words as, I'm meditating and imagining a picture in this general area, and I'm trying to put it there like it's a physical, like I'm pushing this image.
Yes, the problem is they're trying to use their mind. You cannot have the mind in this
dimension, and it's not a spatial thing.
It's not a spatial thing because,
right.
Like Vadim, I love how Vadim explained the mirrors. We're in this physical world and we are moving. We're bound to time and space. So we're constantly moving. But the space of variations is not moving.
Right.
So we tend to move and use our mind and try and get into this space. We have to let go of the mind, let go of the five senses, let go of the meat suit. I'm not Deni. I'm not a mother. I'm not a wife. I'm zero. When I stay zero, that's when I'm up in the back room and I can see it all. Past, present, and future. Exactly. I can see the film that's already been up there because it's scrolled up on the next reel. And I can see the film that's coming through the projector that hasn't yet been put up. And then I can make conscious choices to change it.
So a question I get on my YouTube for that video is, what do I need to change the way I'm visualizing now that we understand the plat? And I don't necessarily think you have to change it. My opinion.
You don't even need to use visualizing. If visualizing is not your bag,
right, which is a lot of
use auditory, use smell, use sounds. Like you're doing these meditations with sound. So it's it doesn't matter which nerve you trigger to connect with it. Right. It's all connected. So if you can't visualize, okay, I can't really visualize it, I can't feel it. Right. If you can just sit quiet and listen to the rustle of the morning stars, that means you're going to make your ears very big, but inside.
That helps. So we could keep on talking about that, but I wanted to talk a little bit more about what we briefly spoke about yesterday. And you had been in 22 ayahuasca ceremonies, which is amazing. And ayahuasca is a fascinating subject for me. And there's so many people out there that have experienced this magic elixir. And if done in the right situation with the right guides or shamans, it can be a powerful spiritual experience to do it just one time. But to do it 22 times, as many people who experience it, it's like you're being guided. It's like a lesson. It's like each step is they're unveiling different parts of yourself or relieving different parts of your ego. And so I can't say that I've talked to anybody that's had 22 ceremonies. So I'd love to get some stories from you, background, or some interesting things, or your experience with ayahuasca.
I had been, going to doctors, and doctors, of course, want to give me a pill, and I was done with it. And so I kind of left myself open for many years for a healing. And a shaman came into my experience who is also a licensed therapist. Okay. And we got to talking, and I said, look, I have trauma and memories from age 4. and then cancer and all of these things. And he said, if you're open to ayahuasca, she will guide you in this healing process. So I did my first ceremony, and I wasn't prepared because it was very last minute. Somebody had said, okay, there's going to be a ceremony and it's tonight. And I'm like, oh my God, I haven't even prepared. I haven't fasted. I haven't done anything like that. But I thought, you know what? I have to go. And part of ayahuasca is purging.
Mm-hmm. Right. The first
purging. Mm-hmm. So the first one, and of course I didn't prepare for it. So I kind of knew. It's like, all right, I'm going to be purging some stuff.
Right.
But I'm purging. And after the ceremony, it was all night. And after the ceremony, the next morning, I didn't feel like I was the same person. And I also felt like I had this profound support that was in me. Mm-hmm. And I did not have another ceremony after, this was like in 2009. I didn't have another ceremony after that for almost 3 years.
Okay.
So my first ceremony, it was like 3 years. And then I started thinking, I'm still having stuff my shit kept coming up. Right. It's like, all right, the stuff keeps coming up. And I wanted to work through it rather than keep suppressing it. And that's what we tend to do. We just keep pushing it back down. And of course, it's going to pop up somewhere else. And usually it popped up in my business, in my relationships, and everything else, right? So I'm like, all right, I'm going to continue this work, even though I was deathly afraid of purging.
Right.
I did not like to purge. Aya is not for everyone, just so you know. It's usually for the most hard-headed egos, the biggest egos.
Yes.
So I began to do regular twice a year, and I called it my spiritual retreats. Mm-hmm. And so when the shaman came up from South America, we all got together and created this community. And community is so important. And Aya is about community. Number one, right. That's your foundation. If you don't have community and acceptance, that's your root chakra. Mm-hmm. Everything else is floating. I mean, it's not grounded. And so I began to work with this shaman and do a lot of this healing work with counseling. So he would go through the ceremony, and then afterwards we would get counseling.
Oh, that's
and
great.
How to apply this. And I hear about people going to an Aya ceremony and it's this nightmare situation. So there are nightmare situations out there, and I'm very fortunate to have found someone who knows how to use this sacred medicine for healing. Mm-hmm. And it was several ceremonies later, it was like around the 7th ceremony, I had a death experience where I was shown death again because I was facing death. But this, I had the experience, energetic experience. I mean, I didn't die, but I died in the Aya experience.
Describe that experience then.
I couldn't feel my body.
Right.
I didn't know where my body ended and this space began. Right. And so I was in this space, and it was terrifyingly blissful. And I began to wonder, wait a second, I'm dead. I'm dead. This is death. This is so beautiful. And of course, a fear came up that, am I going to go back to the ceremony? Am I going to go back? And I just stayed in this space for the longest time. I have no idea how long. But then all of a sudden, I remembered the sensation of going to the bathroom and how the feeling of being alive and having to go to the bathroom. And then I realized, oh, I have to go to the bathroom. And it was that easy to just shift from being in this expansive nothingness to being in the physical. And once I learned that it's a shift, it's literally a shift. It's like I was a cloud
and then shifted
in my physical, and then I shifted into the sky, and I could see the body, observe the body, understand what was going on in the body, be empathic and sympathetic with the body, and loving, because, I hated my body.
Right.
I hated it.
Did you see any machine elves?
I saw the machine.
You saw the machine, okay.
Yes. It looked like the inner workings of a clock.
Okay.
But I did see, as I opened my eyes in the space we were in, there were definitely beings there. So I don't know if that's what you mean by the machine elves.
You saw beings. So, I mean, maybe what's happening is people are seeing beings and they're interpreting them differently. And then after a while, just like words create reality, somebody gave that machine elf thing, and then that's what they became. Like there's jesters. People have seen jesters. It seems like it's an archetype, but it still feels real. I can't explain it. There's definitely, you're witnessing archetypes. Sometimes does it feel like you're witnessing history? It's like you're being shown history. Does that make sense? Like
through movement of the snake. The head to the tail and everything in between.
Okay.
Yes. Coming together, joining, connecting.
Right. Very cool. And so you've talked about your awakening and reality transurfing and ayahuasca. And I always like to ask, have you had a miraculous experience, something that's super crazy that you'd love to share with people? Maybe you saw a UFO or you had a limb grow back, or you saw a fairy. I mean, I'm always fascinated because everybody I meet has had crazy, powerful, unique experiences. It doesn't have to be spiritual. I mean, have you witnessed miracle or anything like that?
Every day.
Do you understand what I'm trying to ask?
Every day.
Every day. All right.
Every day. And you talk about fairies and stuff like that. I have an elemental altar in my woods.
Yeah.
For the fairies, for
very nice.
The elementals, some call them fairies. I like to call them elementals. And the energies that are around, just honoring them. Mm-hmm. And, knowing that I'm not the only thing here, but I'm the only thing here.
Right.
Yeah, definitely. There's a definite connection to other realms.
So have you ever visited another realm? Another dimension, another reality, or anything like that you could discuss?
Yes, definitely through psychedelics. But again, psychedelics are not for everyone. It was something that came to me on my path, and the realm was pure gold. I mean, it was pure light, pure love, and I realized that it was me. Mm-hmm. It wasn't anything separate from me.
Oh, wow.
And so after this, I realized, somebody's in my face. You're a bitch. You're a blah, 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 blah. Uh-huh. All I see is a beautiful being. And then I thank them. Thank you for calling me a bitch. I'm sorry if I made you feel happy, but, just keep being love. And I only see this substance, I guess, that's me.
Wow. That's very cool. So I always like to ask, and I bad habit of not asking recent guests, but your morning routine. Somebody that's developed spiritual practices and learned meditation and seen how reality can be created, you start to really look at what you do the moment you wake up. And I'd love to get an idea of what your morning routine is, what you do every morning on a regular basis. Nobody actually follows their routine exactly, but if on a good day, what kind of routine would you want to do?
Every day I wake up and I'm so grateful. I go right into breath work because I teach mind, body, spirit, breath. Mm-hmm. The breath is the bridge between the seen and the unseen. So when I wake up in the morning, boom, I'm in the seen world from the unseen.
Right.
And so I connect with my breath because the breath is what is going to connect me to the seen and the unseen. And I love Butenko method. I love Wim Hof. You can do a couple rounds of Wim Hof first thing in the morning and connect with that breath. And I got to the point where I get to a place where I'm relaxed, completely relaxed and doing a breath hold. Right. Breath holds, we tend to think, hold your breath really, really tight, tighten everything up and hold it for as long as you can. This is not the case. This is doing the breath work and then exhaling, relax, hold.
Relax,
hold. Relax, hold.
You're just relax, hold.
You're just relax, hold.
Okay.
And for the longest time, I couldn't get past the minute. Mm-hmm. But once I started, this is years ago, once I started really incorporating a lot of self-care, de-stressing, meditation, where I'm able to get my body to relax, because you'll be surprised how many people sleep in a stress state.
Yeah.
So when I'm able to get there, I was able to hold my breath for 3.5 minutes, and I couldn't get past a minute for the longest time.
Right.
I would say the breath.
Yeah, when you do the Wim Hof, it's interesting how you find out how you save oxygen, how you hold oxygen in your body. That breathing technique, it's something that people don't realize, that there's a reserve of oxygen that you save up. Do you understand? Yeah. Absolutely.
And then we have the belief that carbon, your exhale, is bad. You got to get rid of it. But the blood needs 5 to 7% of carbon in it in order to infuse the oxygen.
Ah, very interesting.
So you need carbon. And the breath hold builds up that carbon to a point where you can relax.
Right. Okay. So then after the breath work, next step after that?
Take the dogs out to go potty.
Okay. Right.
And usually I do that barefoot, even in the winter. So I just connect with the ground while they're doing their thing and just be grateful for Earth. And it really puts myself in the space of slowing down, because when you get up, you start thinking, I got to do this, I got to do this, I got to do this, I got to do this interview for the podcast, blah, 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 all of these things. But if I can come to a space of just connecting with the earth, with the physical, and just allowing myself to be, this kind of sets the mindset. Because I know when I get up and I don't do my breath work and I don't do my connection, I'm stressed. I'm like, okay, this, and this. And there's just no space. Right. At all. Yeah.
So when do you meditate? Later in the day? You don't.
First thing.
Your breath
set my mind.
You do the meditation. How long do you meditate?
It really depends. 10 minutes.
10 minutes.
One morning. 30 minutes the next morning. I was recently going through some BS, with the legal system and all that stuff.
Right.
And I would find my breath naturally wanting to be more stressed. And I would need more meditation to get that breath back down. So it really depends on what's going on in my outside world. The more stress out there, that stuff coming at me, the more I have to say, no, I need this time.
What's the longest you've ever meditated?
I couldn't say, but definitely probably a couple of hours.
It's a weird thing going a couple hours with a meditation, kind of a different thing. Yeah.
It's usually at a meditation retreat. I love going to those. And I do Kriya meditation.
Oh, wow.
I love
Kriya
that.
Is incredible, yes.
Yeah,
exactly.
We have a temple.
No, the initiations in Kriya are fascinating to me, because I've read that people make people cry. That when they go through these are simple movements and exercises, right? And they bring up. So I've always been fascinated in looking into doing some of those exercises. Very interesting. So then after that, do you have any journaling practice? When do you usually eat in the morning? When do you exercise? Hey, these are things I got to know, so.
I exercise by try and activate all the major muscles in the body with yoga, and then stretch them out. I love to hang upside down.
Me too. Yeah, it's my thing. I hang upside down in my garage. I don't do yoga. I just, with an inversion table. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm 53, and when I was a kid, I was in gymnastics. So I've been working with my body to keep it pliable and flexible, because when the mind gets rigid, the body gets rigid. When the mind is pliable and flexible, the body stays pliable and flexible. And yoga just connects the body, mind, and spirit.
It really does. It's
together.
Amazing.
Yeah. So you said eating. I was a vegetarian for a long time, for many, many years. However, working with Dr. Mercola, I found that I have severe immune responses to soy. I actually have...
so that might have been what was causing the problem when you were 35 years old.
Very possible. So soy gives me MS symptoms. So my whole right side of the body will become numb. If I get soyed, I can't drive after 45 minutes. It happened one time. Good thing my son was with me. We switched so that he could drive home. So soy gives me MS symptoms. Wheat causes me, after I eat anything with wheat, within 2 hours, I look like I'm 9 months pregnant. I mean, I literally get this distension, and it's painful. Wow. And corn causes skin reactions within me. And of course, legumes, a lot of vegans and vegetarians eat beans.
Beans, right.
They cause severe problems within me. So, breathing issues, and I can't eat bananas. So I learned that, oh my gosh, my body responds to that. Yet I'm being told I should be vegan and eat those things. Right. So I went through a time where it was really hard. And I decided, you know what, I have to listen to my body. And I eat tons of vegetables, some berries, and I introduced minerals, and minerals is a big thing into my body, and very little protein. I try and keep the protein down as much as clean protein, local, grass-fed, free range, not this industrial type meat, because I can
chicken.
I don't know if it's beef? Psychological. Local meat, we have bison local, we have chickens local, we have whatever's local, locally and humanely raised.
All right.
That's a big
your diet had to be part of your recovery, and so it's
absolutely
important question.
Yeah.
So
probably sugar. Sugar's a grain. So along with soy, wheat, corn, sugar. Sugar is a grain. So soy, wheat, and corn have the same effects as sugar.
Right.
So sugar in the body is poison.
Very cool. It's I always also like to ask if you have any movies that I'm a big movie buff. Do you have any movies that you like to recommend? It doesn't have to be related to what we're talking about. Any ones that we might not have heard of that would be really great to check out. As a movie buff, I always like to ask everybody.
The Fifth Element.
Oh, yes.
My all-time favorite. I love that movie, Groundhog Day. And anything sci-fi.
When Luc Besson came out with his new science fiction movie that was kind of looked like The Fifth Element, I forgot the name of it right now. Do you remember what I'm talking about? Oh, okay. There's a movie that he made, and I will message you the name of it. I'm sure that people can put in the comments. And it looks exactly like Fifth Element. It's like a little bit different, and so by the same director. But yeah, Fifth Element is a all-time classic, no doubt. And any books that you'd recommend? Books that we might find super, other than Reality Transurfing, which is obviously one that we share. But any other books? One thing, everybody on the channel, you got to listen. Deni reads Your Invisible Power by Genevieve Barrand, which is terrific reading. If you listen to it, she does an awesome job. And it's a very relevant book. I was listening to it, and it's could be written for today.
Oh my gosh, yes.
It's an evergreen book in many ways. And what she's talking about is consistent with reality transurfing and everything else. And
that book was written in 1912.
Yeah, I really enjoyed your reading of it, and I recommend anybody gets a chance to check that out. Do you have any books that you recommend that in this, that the people in the reality revolution might find interesting?
When I was going through a really, really hard time at work, there was a book that I kept with me and just would open it up and just read whatever page it opened up to. Was Autobiography of a Yogi.
Oh, okay. It's a classic, and I love that.
Yeah.
And a lot of people talk. When people.
Are you there? Did you freeze?
No, I'm still here. I
mentioned the word Autobiography of a Yogi, and we freeze.
And now you just froze. And now, all right.
Oh no. Okay, there you are.
All right. Well, hopefully they can at least listen to it. We still got it. But Autobiography of a Yogi, when people see that book when they're at the bookstore, I don't think they realize how crazy some of the stuff is in that book. The stuff that he's talking about with different dimensions and apparitions right off the bat. This is not hey, this guy lived in this city and he learned how to cook. And this is crazy stuff, the Autobiography of a Yogi. And one of Steve Jobs' favorite books. And every time, the first time I read it, my jaw dropped. I was like, is that real? First of all, that question, is it real? What do you think? Do you think it's all real?
It's the mind asking, is that real?
Right.
But the heart knows.
The heart knows, right.
Yeah. And I felt my mind going, bullshit, but my heart going, oh my God, this is awesome. Oh my God, this is awesome.
Right.
Yeah.
I had that the other day when I was reading the Law of One. Have you had a chance to read that?
I may have. It sounds familiar.
It's these three guys channeled in the 80s, and they channeled Ra. And listen to it's on their website, and they describe how we're all moving into different densities and what our higher self is, and social memory complexes. And like you just said, my first thought was, this doesn't sound right. But my heart was like, this is right. This stuff is completely correct. The whole idea is that that the whole universe is one thought.
Yeah.
The whole universe is the result of one thought.
Exactly. And I'm going to mention
incredible idea, so sorry, go ahead.
And I'm going to mention the Bible too, because
absolutely.
I grew up Christian in a Christian organization, and I came to a point where I was just like, nothing Christian, because of the doctrine and the the men being in power. And, I was told by an elder in our church that I wasn't spiritual enough.
Oh, wow.
And it kind of like, spiritual enough, what does that mean? And Autobiography of a Yogi is my start of answering that question of what does that mean?
Right.
So I was kind of resistant to anything Christian. However, I started reading the Bible again, and just little passages, and even things in Genesis or Job, the book of Job, or any of these things has a whole new meaning. Oh my gosh. Yeah. So if we can get past the words in our brain saying these are the words and these are what we have to do, but get into the experience of it, it's a whole different meaning. It takes on a whole different.
Yeah. That happened for me recently, and I had reread the Bible because of Neville Goddard and the way that he makes it that the Bible is this ultimate treatise that gives you the secrets to life in every way when you truly understand, when he explains it. And I went back and I was just blown away by how timeless the Bible is when people will use it for however they want and whatever they want. And so, yes, I recommend. I get exactly what you're saying, and that was a great choice. I appreciate that, and very powerful. Well, it's been a super pleasure to spend this time with you, and I really appreciated it. Thank you so much for having me on your show, and I'm so glad that you could come on mine. I learned so much, and we should definitely collaborate and work on. We should do another interview again soon, because we've covered all the basics. Next time we can go even deeper. And I just wanted to thank you so much. I really appreciated this, and welcome to the Reality Revolution.
Thank you so much for having me, Brian. This has been spectacular.
This is awesome. Yes, thank you.